how do you think the Dolphins handled Tua's injuries from last year? Those concussions.
Well, I think it's, two things you have to take into account. One
Mm-hmm.
is the business side of, the business, right? Like that's what it is first. But then as an athlete, the things that get you to that point are a lot of times the things that make you not so good at, making other decisions, because to some degree you feel invincible. You have to have a certain level of confidence. And so until you have those things, it's hard to say, well, the average person can say, yeah, I would have, not played ever again. Well, for many of these guys like myself, that was all you ever thought about.
Definitely.
This is your dream, and you get to that point and you getting a chance to experience that. Yeah, I know your health is in question, and I know your health is, more important and more vital than the career, but also just realizing, what's at stake for a lot of these young men. We've never thought of ourselves in any other light, a lot of times up until this point. And so you try to put yourself in a position to say, I want to do this as long as I can, because we all have an expiration date, not only in our careers, but also just in life in general. And so, we try to maximize this opportunity. So that's a tough decision to say, hey, I never want to play this game again. And so, part of it is Tua's decision. Part of it is from a business perspective that, the Dolphins have to make a decision, one, to protect themselves from a business perspective, but also realizing like, hey, this young man, I'm sure if it was up to him, he made a decision to say, hey, I'm not ready to call it quits. Now, going forward, if there is a situation, Lord forbid that there is another opportunity, he gets another concussion, then that may be something on the table. But at this point, it's hard to tell a young man to say, hey, man, you need to retire and no longer do this.
Definitely, man. Yeah, I mentioned that subject to Captain Mutterland on one of my previous interviews, and how I look at that sort of scenario. I think the franchises should have like a governor, like a truck does. It won't exceed a certain limit. Like, he basically had a seizure on the field, basically. But
right.
That's a scary situation to put a player in.
Yeah, and I think, too, just looking at it, I think you look at, what was the situation last year with the young man who had, the heart issues, like,
Damar Hamlin.
Damar Hamlin. For him to think about playing football again, I think that's, troubling for some people to digest. But at the end of the day as well, you have to look at these young men and understand as young adults, a lot of times, we may not always make the best decision in our own light or, that's for us, but I think also being able to be empathetic and realizing, what these young men, all the work that you put into it to get to this point, and you take the proper protocols, the proper precautions, and, if the doctors say, hey, it's okay to play again, is it wrong for these young men to try that out? Now, if the doctors and everyone in their corner saying, no, you shouldn't try this out, I think that's a totally different story. But, I think you just have to weigh in all, I think the facts and the factors, and then you make an educated decision, and sometimes that takes time, but every situation is different as well. And so, I'd be wrong to say, if I were in that position, this is what I would do, because I'm not, and so I can't justly speak on, the decision that's being made on someone else's career and someone else's life.